Hi everyone, it's Philip here, recording again in the cafe at church, the back pew, and deliberately so, just warming myself on this coffee machine because it's really cold today, really wild wintry weather, and it's quite nice to cuddle up against the coffee machine. It's really warm. Had a really fascinating week, which relates bang on with the text, which is obviously what I want to relate this morning. Coming out of Revelation chapter 15, which is the end of this vision cycle before we move into the 7 bowls, which is the last of the 7 plague cycles. And a kind of typical Revelation fashion, what John does is he weaves the beginning of the next vision cycle in with the ending of the previous one. So he talks about the fact that these 7 bowls are being brought forward, but we'll leave that there. What I want to share on is, as I said, I had an interesting week where in several occasions the same subject came up, and kind of those serendipitous moments where I think, I kind of really need to refer to that in the text here, because I think the text is talking about these very issues, and it kind of relates to what we think about when it comes to what heaven is and what we're going to be like when we get to that point. When the new heavens and earth come, what do we expect? What should we expect? And so the text itself talks about the Song of Moses, which is in fact the Lamb's song, which is sung by the saints at a place in heaven which is described as like a sea of glass mixed with fire. So quite a strange image. The idea of there being a sea of glass that looks like the sea but made of glass in the heavenly throne room is a kind of common idea. It's found in almost any description of that heavenly throne room. Even goes all the way back to a scene in Exodus where Moses and the elders meet with God on Mount Sinai, and it seems like there's a sea made of what looks like emerald. So the idea of the floor of heaven being like a transparent sea, maybe, or a sea made of something firm, for one thing. It's quite a common idea, comes out almost whenever someone has a heavenly experience. And referring to Moses and the saints singing the Song of Moses, which is in fact the Song of the Lamb, as it says here in Revelation. Initially, the first thought, of course, is that this is what Moses sang, what the people sang at the Red Sea when they had been saved from Pharaoh's armies, and God had led them between the waters, and when the people were safely on the other side and the armies of Pharaoh were charging after them, the waters closed up again and swallowed their enemies. And so the song evokes that idea that God the Creator is going to save his people from the enemy. And the enemy in this case, as we know, isn't Pharaoh and his armies. It's the great enemy of the serpent and the beast from the sea and the beast from the land. And all who serve them, they will be destroyed by the Creator. So that's one part of what's evoked here in this image, the idea of destroying those enemies. But I think what I want to talk about is something a little more kind of, firstly, odd. What we picture when we think of heaven, firstly, quite a common modern view, perhaps, or sort of pop culture view, is this idea of heaven with people with their harps, dressed in white robes, sitting on clouds with these fluffy white wings, and just sort of strumming harps all day and singing hymns and songs to God. As if to say, well, who would want to do that? And fair enough, I don't think anyone really wants to be doing that. It's certainly not my gig. I love music and I love playing guitar, but I have absolutely no desire to sit on a cloud playing harps for eternity. Not at all what I'm picturing when I think of heaven. So that being a sort of a pop culture idea, and of course, we can see actually if you're going to get something like that, where would that come from? Well, it's going to come straight out of Revelation, where things are happening on clouds and there are harps handed down. These things are part of the mix. Just had a little break. My mate Gary Gilpin from Hukanui has popped in and had a good old yarn, and as he was leaving he said, well, make sure that you mention my name. He wants to be famous So the 20 people who watch this video now know him as well, and he could be famous to you guys as much as he's famous to me. He's an awesome dude. Just want to put that on record on YouTube, make it international. Anyway, where was I? I think I was talking about how people have often viewed heaven, which is kind of an image none of us really are that attracted to, the idea of fluffy white clouds and feathery wings and halos and harps. And of course, in this story, we've got the saints being given harps. It's kind of like, it's like our vision of heaven is 2,000 years old. It's probably how to put it. I love music, as I mentioned. I play guitar. I play electric guitar. I do have an acoustic guitar, but electric's my thing. And if I think about heaven, it's going to have a lot more to do with rock and roll than harps, to be honest. And if heaven really is heaven, then I think that there's going to be a bit of rock and roll. There's going to be some good times with an awesome Fender Stratocaster going through a big Marshall 4x12, making plenty of noise. And if there's anything that I've got from the worship scenes from Revelation, it's that plenty of noise is kind of par for the course. So I reckon I'm going to fit in a whole lot better than playing harps and sitting on clouds. But it's a popular image. It's an image that comes out of lots of different kind of snippets of scenes that we get in Revelation and different parts of Scripture where heavenly scenes are drawn for us. But it's not really about that, is it? It's not imagining that heaven really is just a place stuck in time that has never moved on from harps and white robes. I don't think that's what it's about. And the story here really isn't trying to help us imagine what heaven is like, other than this particular thing. And I want to kind of just riff a little bit on what does the sea mixed with sea of glass mixed with fire. What could that mean? And I mean, there are lots of different ways that people have reflected on that, and it's not that clear, and it's probably not an essential detail. However, the conversations I've had in this last week, which are not conversations I often have, and therefore the fact that I've had several of them this week is cause for me to reflect, and it attaches, I think, quite nicely to this text. It's the idea of what will we be like in the new heaven and new earth? Will we be recognizable? Will we bear the scars that we have now? I don't know if you'll see, I've got a scar on my forehead here, which I got when I was about 22, diving into a pool and hitting the bottom. And it was a public pool, and I came up, and the guy sitting on the side of the pool looked at me with this kind of shock. I knew I'd hit the bottom, obviously. I felt that. And was coming out of the pool to kind of see what was going on, but he had this look of horror on his face. And when I touched my hands, it came away with, soaked in blood. I really split my head open and had to go to the hospital. Was in Taupo, so I got myself stitched up and sent home and suffered a little bit of a mild concussion. But I wonder whether those kinds of scars will persist. I know that Jesus still has his scars. I mean, look, the picture of Jesus on the throne is of a lamb as though slain. And that obviously is a reference to the fact that his sacrifice on the cross is not something to be forgotten. It's something to be remembered for eternity. That he hasn't left his past behind as if it was immaterial. His past stays with him in eternity because it's meaningful, because his sacrifice is everything to us. It's the very thing, it's his willingness to give his life for us that meant that he could open that scroll at the beginning. Those 7 seals are broken by a lamb who was slain because of his faithfulness, his trustworthiness, his power is seen most in the fact that he gave his life for us, or at least seen most clearly. So his scars, still he bears them. When he came back, when he was resurrected and he came back and visited his disciples in that locked room, he said, "Look, here are my scars. Here's on my hand where the nails went through. Look at my side, doubting Thomas, and we'll see where the spear went in. Put your hand in there." It seems to me that these experiences that we go through, in life, and it may not be that banging your head at the bottom of a pool is a kind of experience that will persist in eternity. That might not, carry on. The new body might not carry that scar. But I suspect that the experiences of our faith, the scars that we carry in the war to hold faith to God, that these will definitely be part of our being going forward. Our stories in eternity will persist, because without a past, who are you? Without memories of where we've come from, how can we say, how can we love a God that we didn't learn to love through those experiences? So of course our stories now are going to matter into eternity, and the scars that we might bear, emotional, psychological, physical, I suspect that they won't have an enduring sting to them, that we won't be psychologically tormented by the things that we might have had to go through. But like Jesus, we'll bear these scars and show them to one another, and they'll be badges of honor, just as Christ's scars and his Lamb that was slain nature is a badge of honor. It's not something to be ashamed of at all. And for me, I think that maybe that's what this sea of glass mixed with fire is about. Because one of the recurring ideas behind faith is that it's something that is refined in fire. Who we are as we grow and mature as saints is in a large part what we become through enduring suffering and going through hardship that refines us and burns away the stuff that doesn't really belong. Kind of the character traits that shouldn't survive eternity. Those things are burned away as we struggle on with God and trust Him even through trial. Romans 5 is really good on this. He talks about really a hope is based on going through hardship, enduring suffering, holding on, and that refines a hope in us, a genuine hope. So I wonder then whether that's really what we should think about when we think about heaven, a place where we get to tell these stories, and show these badges of honor, these scars that represent our struggle for the Lord. And I don't know what that might mean to you and what it might mean for you, what kind of scars that you might proudly show off as your commitment to Christ. It might not be, as I say, a physical scar. There might be those stories, though, that you tell that in their own way have been quite scarring, damaging, painful experiences, as suffering often is. And you wouldn't want to forget them. You wouldn't want to gloss over them or leave them behind as if meaningless, because having gone through that, it's formed you, shaped you. It's who you are in Christ. As He has reformed and delivered us, He has done that through these incredible stories. When I say these incredible stories, I'm thinking of stories already. I'm thinking of people I know who have gone through real incredible hardship, who've endured a lot for faith and for God's sake. And for me, their stories are incredibly inspiring, and I can't wait to hear your stories in heaven. I can't wait to sit down together after playing, jamming together in a rock band, sitting together and sharing those stories of what we went through for Christ's sake and in Christ's name. I wonder, even someone had this idea that maybe he'd have this DVD of our lives, and Judgment Day is putting the DVD on, and instead of showing the stuff that we're all kind of terrified that He will show, it'll be all the things that actually represent our journey in Christ and growing up and maturing in Christ, those moments, the highlight reel of things that we did do faithfully for Him and with Him, rather than a shaming thing. And I feel like that's probably got a lot more to do with the nature of God than putting up a DVD to shame people about the awful things that they might have done deliberately or accidentally on earth. So that's my thoughts. The sea mixed with fire. A final thought on this. In ancient cosmology, the sea was the source of chaos, the place of chaos. It was the thing out of which sort of evil and chaotic forces lurked, probably because it was constantly moving. Unlike the earth, which was stable and reliable and settled, the sea was constantly moving and unsettled. And we see in Jesus, when He calmed the storm when He was on the boat, or walked on the water in the middle of a storm, in those ways, he was demonstrating his power over those chaotic forces. Walking on the water in the middle of a storm is about as good a demonstration of his power over chaos as you might imagine, but then calming a storm with a word, just as much a thing. So a sea that would look like glass is almost to say, it's still a sea, but now the chaos is over. It's settled, it's stable, it's firm. You can stand on it, you can trust it. Why? Because it has now come to rest before the Lord. So that's a bit of a thought related to that idea of the seas and what they meant in an ancient cosmology, and therefore what a sea of glass might mean in that same cosmology. I hope that was helpful. As I said, I'd look forward to hearing your stories one day, the incredible stories of your faith in Christ and what he has brought you through, and showing off our scars together. Anyway, I think that's a much better image than sitting on clouds playing harps and singing boring hymns. Not that all hymns are boring, but I can't imagine that kind of heaven, but I can imagine the other one, sitting around and sharing those stories of what we've done with and through Christ and how he brought us through. Anyway, peace be with you. Whatever you're going through, may Christ bring you through with scars to show and be proud of. God bless.